Hello everyone, Michael here for Tactica Imperialis. Welcome to today's video. Today is going to be a army showcase video, painting and modelling army showcase video, because I have finished my largest painting project to date, my Green Tide. For those who don't know, I came into the possession of a very large amount of Orc boys in exchange for my Imperial Guard, which is why you haven't seen Imperial Guard in a long time. And I set myself a challenge for my first year of university to paint them all up. When I did the math, it turned out there's about 100-ish of just standard boys, and you can add in special weapons and knobs to that. Meaning that when I get a full complement of special weapons and knobs, currently I can get to 125 for my Green Tide formation. Now I pulled a couple of special weapons out there, so I think we're looking at a little bit less than that. But I want to show off all the models that I've painted, and then give some advice towards the end of the video about batch painting, because this has been an exercise in batch painting for me, because I'm not a very good painter, but I'm very efficient, and I've got more and more efficient because I've been doing tons and tons of dudes. So we're going to do that at the end of the video, some advice on how to paint in bulk. But with that said, let's take a look at my Green Tide formation. There they are, my Green Tide, fully assembled, fully painted, ready to go. So I put a couple characters in the front just because when I run it as a Green Tide, you had to have a war boss, and because I want to add a couple of other characters into the unit. So along the front we have my Mega Armored war boss, although I think I will probably actually run this war boss just because he doesn't have Mega Armor, he won't slow the squad down. More for aesthetic reasons as to why I picked this one. I've got my Big Mech, the Custom Force Field, my Pain Boy, and my Weird Boy as well, just because I think they'd be really, really useful in a formation like this. So we're just going to take them out, and we're going to take a look predominantly at the boys. The knobs, with a couple of exceptions, were not painted specifically for the Green Tide, but we'll take a look at them nonetheless. So I originally intended to start by painting all of my boys with blue shirts. I copied the paint scheme I did on my shooter boys. If you want to go and see how I did these guys, there is a painting tutorial, which I'll put in the description. I thought I'll copy that paint scheme, but I'll change the shirt colour from Lich Purple to what was at the time Enchanted Blue, and I believe it's now called Macragge Blue, which is why I have such a large number of boys who are in blue shirts. Most notably, for example, this guy has a blue shirt, this guy has a blue shirt. In fact, I have 60 who have blue shirts. The majority are blue shirts, and they form the core of the army. However, I already had painted up 15 boys who, in the current paint scheme of Orc, with orange shirts. Let's take this guy, for example. He's painted up exactly like my shooter boys are, except he has an orange shirt. And I decided I didn't want to repaint all of these, seeing as I'd already done them once. So what I did is I decided to have different squads to resemble the fact that Orcs are quite a motley band. Different squads sort of band together around knobs. And so while there is a big block of 60, there are other knobs and squads involved as well. So at the back here, we have 20 in yellow, we have the 50 in orange, and then we have 20 in white shirts. That is Administratum Grey. My Celestial Grey went all watery, my Astronomicon Grey ran out. I'm having real trouble getting a white paint that works, but my Administratum Grey has been doing me really good. And the best painted models in the squads are the knobs if I decided to dedicate them to the squad. So for example, the white squad, its knob is painted to a far greater level of detail than I think I probably should have done. I'm struggling to get it to focus, so let me just... Okay, there we go. Now you're the focus of the image. You can see because knobs are so much larger than regular Orcs, it is very easy to get them to a higher level of detail, like be more accurate, more precise, and particularly applies to the skin. When I did this batch painting, I only actually applied one highlight, and that was to the skin. But it just makes it easy to pick out the details, like on the armor, all the little joins between the armors, the fingernails, and all those different things are so much easier because the models are that much larger. Like a knob next to a boy, the difference is startling. So they're probably the best painted models in the set, but that's not to say the boys are that bad either. And that pretty much sums up the whole idea. So I started off, I painted up all of the blues. I had the oranges pre-done, and I painted up all of the blues, which was a bit of a chore, I'll be honest, because a lot of them were completely grey, which is great, because if you're starting from completely grey, you can just begin and go. I've actually forgotten to highlight one boy. I would need to redress that in a minute. And you start from grey, it's really easy. You can just start painting and go. However, the problem arose when I had to repaint a lot of the boys that I had in my previous collection or that I had received in the trade that had been pre-painted. So for example, I look at my white squad, which is predominantly stuff. A lot of the paint was on quite thick. So if you look at this guy's face, you can see it's a bit of a poor highlighting on my part. The problem is that the layers of paint that were on the model were already quite thick. So I went with my clippers and actually scraped off a bunch of paint from the slugger, the chopper, any armor plating I could get that was flat enough. And it made it a bit of a pain to paint. That said, I'm quite happy with them now, and it just slowed things down a little bit. I found that Black Reach boys were much easier to paint than regular boys. The reason for that is because they're push fit models, half of them weren't glued, so I could just pull them apart. And the ones that were, well, the poses are more open. Particularly with my original collection of boys, if I look at this guy, I built them really badly. Like, so badly, it's just not funny. So it was quite a pain to paint those again without breaking them apart. The Black Reach boys are on a naturally open pose, so they were just easier to paint, I found. Excuse me. Which was part of the reason why actually Black Reach boys, if you're going to start as an Orc player, are the best you can have, because they're just easier to paint than regular boys. They're more open and they're more uniform, so you can get into a rhythm rather than with regular boys where they're a bit more all over the place depending on who put them together. Like if I put them together, they look like garbage. There are a couple of special knobs that I want to show you, and a couple of special weapons. So we have this guy. Whoa. This guy is probably one of my best painted models, full stop. I went really to town getting all the detailing right. I spent a lot of time on the hair. He's actually also converted. This slugger comes from Boss Zagstruck, actually. Because it has the bayonet. It's actually a metal slugger. I glued that on, which is why he's a little bit rickety at times. Painted on a name, a war cry on his base. And he's sort of like my display model. My knobs often have black shirts. I don't know why I went with black, but I find that it just adds this like dark menacing thing, and it reminds me of the Black Orks from Fantasy, who were like the equivalent to knobs. They were the big scary beat 'em ups. When I actually did the Green Tide knobs, a lot of them do have blue shirts or shirts corresponding to their squads, but I like this black shirt and I'm going to keep it. The next one I want to show you is this guy. Now this guy is a little bit all over the place. This guy was originally a Warbiker knob, which is why you probably aren't familiar with that chest plate and why the feet look so square. He was actually from the Warbiker's kit, and he was my second attempt at Wazdaka Gutsmech. However, I took him off the bike, mounted him on a base with his chain fist, and I've now given him a slugger from this knob here. I gave him a head from the boys kit, which is the knob from the boys kit, added a shoulder pad, and painted him up. It's a bit of a conversion. Like, there's an arm swap, there's a head swap, there's a random horn that I can't remember where it came from, and I have converted the power claw. But that model has just been sitting around, like, looking terrible for ages, and then I've reconverted him up, and I'm actually really quite happy with how he looks now. And I think that's it for knobs. I do want to show you a couple of... Oh, actually, no, I missed one. We have a second orange knob at the back. He's not actually finished. He's just there as a filler, because at the moment my plan is to run it, I'm deploy them as squads, but I've added the knobs in for extra effect. He's not actually finished, but he's just quite a cool conversion. That's actually some Mega Knobs components gone in there. In terms of special weapons, I actually was missing a lot of my special weapons. So I only had a couple of big shooters and a couple of and one rocket launcher when I got started. So I had to convert a couple of old big shooters that I had just done horribly and redo them. So for example, this guy is made entirely of, it's one of the boys plus a spare big shooter from the looters and burners frame. Just attached on and left to go. I think it's actually a knob's head as well. Excuse me, I've got a little bit of a cold. It's really not shifting and this weather isn't helping. This guy was actually, now this is an interesting model because the body of this guy is actually metal. That's a unique torso. There are a couple more that I'll show you in a minute. But I lost the arm that holds the ammo. So I gave him a slugger, swapped the head in, and he's just an extra one that I needed to make up the numbers. I do have another converted big shooter over in my shooter boy squad, but that's just basically got a chopper instead of a slugger. Then I have a second rocket launcher. Again, I used spares from the looters and burners frame. Plus, this is actually a Mech Boys body from my original looters and burners frame. But I messed around with it for ages and converted it to hell. And eventually I've settled on making a rocket launcher with a chopper. Because, as I think I mentioned at the time, the looters and burners kit didn't come with a second hand for each of the special weapons, which is really, really annoying. So I couldn't actually have him with the hand holding the rocket. So I gave him a chopper instead. I've got plenty of those knocking about from when I did my shooter boys. As regards those metal bodies, I know there's a couple of them around. I just need to find them. Here we go. Here's one. As you can see, that's a unique torso. You probably don't see that one very often. It's a metal Orks torso. Oh god, where did that go? There we go. And actually, it was nice to paint something that was not the same as all the other Orks that I'd been painting for a while, just to break the monotony. There's another one here, and I think there is a third one just here, which is the same as the other one. And yeah, that's the Green Tide in a way. Now, it's laid out in 15s. Don't know why I went in 15s. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rows back, which is 120. Which, when you pull all of these 5 forward, because the characters fill up this front 5, it does take you to pretty much 120. That's when you add in all the knobs and things, because it's not exactly perfect. Having said that, I'm really happy with how they look, and let me know what you think of them in the comments below. But I said I'd talk about batch painting, and that's what we're going to do right now. Some advice on how you can paint a batch painted army just like I have. And there you have my Green Tide. I hope you enjoyed the models. I hope that they weren't too terribly painted. I know I'm not that good, and particularly when you see Kieran's New Age series, it's quite intimidating, but well, I hope you like them. In terms of how I painted them in batches. Now, batch painting is a skill in and of itself, and it's something I want to talk about right now. So, batch painting is one of those skills that you just have to learn your limits with. Some people can put 100 models in front of them and say, I can paint this all. I'm not one of those people. If you're someone who has played Space Marines for a long, long time, played quite an elite Space Marine army with veterans, Terminators and things, and then suddenly you switch to Tyranids and you have a bunch of bugs to paint, it can be quite galling, quite shocking and intimidating. It's like, whoa, I'm not going to paint that. And you've got to try and reduce the amount that you think you have to paint by hiding it, basically. I had a box that came with all the Green Tide stuff, and that box has sat in the bottom of my wardrobe all year, or for the past 2 months. And I've taken 10 boys out of it at a time, put them on my paint station, and got on with it. Painting 10 at a time is far less scary than painting 100 at a time. Because when you paint a 10-man squad, it's like, okay, there's a 10-man squad. I've painted 10-man squads tons of times. This is going to be easy. And you just paint a 10-man squad, and then you put it up on display and say, okay, there you go. Now let's get another one. And you break it down into manageable chunks. Maybe you can only work in 5s. Let's say you're building a certain army that doesn't require you to have 100, only requires you to have 50. Maybe you just want to paint them in 5s because you're really not used to it. You come from, say, Lord of the Rings, or you come from Age of Sigmar, which doesn't have that higher model count. So paint them in 5s. And the main thing you really have to make sure is that you have a paint scheme that you can repeat easily. Make a test model that uses the best you can do with that paint scheme. Go completely to town on it. But think about, if I'm going to do this quickly and efficiently, what would I not do? Would I miss that washout? Would I highlight all these components? No. You've got to think about all the components you need to make the models look good. And gradually, as you work through the next model and the next model and the next model, you'll work out what you need to have to make the models look presentable. Of course, your definition of presentable is probably different to mine. Mine is that is presentable. To others, it's just not. So, paint them in small amounts and keep the rest out of sight, because if they're in sight, you're going to get intimidated by it. I know I was when I saw how many boys I had to paint. Pick a paint scheme that you can use over and over again. It's going to be easy to repeat, so I would avoid freehand where possible, and simple enough that you can do it 100,000 times, and you know exactly what paints you're going to use. You know what order you're going to paint in. So you know, so when I painted my orcs, I went skin, shirt, armor, trousers, other leather, shoes, metal, highlight, and teeth. Every single time. I had a pattern and it stuck. I always kept to the same pattern because that's what worked for me. Find a rhythm, find a flow, and go for it. I find it works that I paint the best when I have music or I'm watching a live stream, but that's just me. Find a zone that you can get into that allows you to work efficiently. Don't get too distracted, although you're allowed to go off on tangents in your own head. You've just got to think about it, really. There's not much more I can say other than just don't feel like you have to rush. Not everybody paints at the same speed I did. I mean, I knocked out the best part of that green tide in 2 months. Like, I repainted probably 100 orcs in 2 months, which is really, really fast. Like, that's more than one model a day, which actually doesn't sound all that much. But considering like it took me probably a couple of weeks before I even got onto the green tide, you're looking at probably 2 models a day that I was knocking out, which when you break it down is nothing. It's nothing. And that's on student life. Like, if I can find time in a busy university schedule and being a student and doing everything that students do to paint 2 orcs a day, then so can you. Break it down into manageable chunks and you will find it so easy and so chill. It will just be easy. So don't worry about that 100th block of guardsmen or gaunts that sat there. Don't be intimidated by the bunch of Khorne Bloodbound that got dumped on you because all your friends were playing Stormcast and you chose to play Bloodbound. Don't get overawed by it, don't get intimidated by it, just be methodical. Work it through step by step, and when it comes to actually painting, now I found when I was painting that I wasn't actually painting all 10 in one go. I was painting them in 3s, and I could knock out 3 orcs in an hour by just following my step and going, so I paint the blue, the blue, the blue, the green, the green, the green, the red, the red, the red. By the time you finished the loop, you probably dried on the first model, particularly on the early components where it actually mattered. So working in 3s or 4s breaks the task down even further and makes it even easier for you to do. Maybe set yourself goals. So by the end of the week, I want to paint this 10-man squad. Or by the end of the month, I want this to be a full-size. I want it to be a full-size squad, which might be, let's say, 35 cultists. So by the end of the month, that means I need to paint 1 cultist a day. Just break it down. Make it easier for yourself, because if you think, oh my god, I have 100 orcs to paint, you're going to struggle. Like, I look at my orcs the same way I look at my work. If I think about all the work I have to do in one big block, I'm going to panic. If I think about the work I have to do, it's like, okay, so I need to have this done by this point, so let's do that, let's do that, let's do that, let's do that. Make a plan, be methodical. It makes it so much easier. And that's all there is about batch painting. It's all about making your life easier. Last thing is spray and undercoating. Now, I can't spray here. I'm in university halls, and I'm not going to go outside to do it because it always rains. This is Manchester, for crying out loud. So I don't spray. I also don't undercoat. I know, heresy. I don't undercoat. But I found that particularly if you're starting from dark base colours, you don't need an undercoat. If you're starting from dark base colours, you don't need a black undercoat. If you're starting from light base colours, okay, a white undercoat would have probably helped on my yellow squad, but that was it, really. So you don't need an undercoat. Some people would swear by it. I haven't undercoated in years, and well, yes, my models look a bit terrible. They're fine. They're presentable. Excuse me. And yeah, that's all there is to say. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you found the models at least acceptable, because, yeah, they took me a fair bit of time. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Michael for Tactica Imperialis, and until next time, I'll see you all again.